Charlie mentioned I turned 21 a couple days ago. He lied to you. Um, I turned 23. No, I turned 33. And just in keeping with my desire to be more like Jesus, I just want to pre-announce my retirement in 3 years. So make these next 3 years good for me, please. Uh, Father, I thank you that there's an opportunity to come and share what I feel like you've put on my heart, and I just pray that the words that are from you would go out, would plant themselves in the soil of the hearts of those that listen, and the words that are mine would just fall away. People would forget it, so all they can remember is a great message. In Jesus' name, amen. So I uh, I want to talk to you guys about um, maturity. I want to talk to you guys about how to be, or not how to be, but becoming mature Christians, because it's actually a really important thing that we're supposed to do. We come into the kingdom as children, we come in the kingdom as babies, and we're supposed to grow. And I think sometimes we don't think about it, we don't look at it, we're not deliberate about it as much as we probably should. And so the Lord was talking to me for, he's 4 months now about this, about being mature, about wisdom. I don't know how much I'll get into wisdom today. That feels like a massive series. That would just be awesome to do a wisdom series, but so I'm going to be working on that. But I want to talk about maturity. What does it mean to be mature? What does maturity look like in us as Christians? And I want to start with Hebrews 5, verses 13 and 14. This is probably my favorite. It was actually in the middle of a rebuke, what I'm about to read. The author of Hebrews kind of rebuking the people reading it. But I want to start at verse 13, on chapter 5, verse 13. Skip some of the rebuke, because it's not about a rebuke. This isn't about a rebuke. But I want to grab this principle. So starting at verse 13, for everyone who lives on milk is unskilled in the word of righteousness, since he is a child. But solid food is for the mature, for those who have their powers of discernment trained by constant practice to distinguish good from evil. I like that principle there, and is important, and it's not. It shows us that we actually are growing. In 1 Peter, it talks about spiritual milk, and it actually says earnestly, desire spiritual milk for yourself. And so there's this thing where we come into the kingdom as children. And in many ways, we're supposed to stay there. We're supposed to keep our heart, our childlike faith. We're supposed to stay there. But there's also this maturing process. In the Bible, I love that concept because it's a real concept for us in real life. It mirrors real life. When we come into this world, we drink milk. We don't have teeth. We can't chew solid food. But as we get older and as we mature, we actually are able to start chewing solid food. We develop the skills necessary to be able to taste and see. And I've taught a message before, many years ago, on this, and I really love this analogy. We're built as mammals. God built us to accept the milk of our mother. And the milk of our mother is actually perfectly suited for us. And it's very interesting. My wife and I started having children 5 years ago. And we kind of started having children right as there was this new wave of really encouraging mothers to breastfeed. And if they couldn't breastfeed, if there's problems with latching and all that, at least pump and give your child your milk, because that milk was perfectly suited for the child. It gave them the nutrients, it gave them the probiotics. Everything the child needed to be healthy, to grow strong, was actually already being produced by the mother in most circumstances. And there was this realization in the medical community that we need to do that. What I think is interesting is we're actually built to drink milk to a point, and then milk becomes less beneficial. It stops providing those needed nutrients. Did you guys know that most of us, actually all of us, to a certain extent, become lactose intolerant as we get older. Every one of us will become lactose intolerant to a certain extent. Because lactose intolerance is our bodies don't know how to process the sugar, lactose, that you find in milk, that you find in dairy. Our bodies, when we're being formed in our mom's womb, create a specific amount of lactase, which is the enzyme to break down lactose. You with me? We use that up. So as we get older, we have a decreasing supply of lactase. So we become less and less able to handle lactose. We're actually built to move away from milk and to begin to eat food, solid food. It's our developmental process. We have no teeth, we form teeth. I remember hearing my wife, I knew exactly when my child started having teeth. Right? And I also noticed because I let them chew on my knuckle until that needs to stop. So this maturing thing is built in. It not only does it happen in the natural, it happens in the spiritual. And I joked with Charlie about this. I want to give a disclaimer here. I'm not saying that we need to be mature and we're supposed to be mature, and if you're not mature, feel bad. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is we're supposed to be maturing. That you should wake up a little bit more mature than you were the day before. It's completely natural to have some areas in your life where you are feeling like, I'm pretty mature. I'm able to cut my own food and put it in my mouth and chew and swallow. I'm able to do it all by myself. And there's some areas where we are more, we're younger, we're more immature, and we're learning, and that's perfectly okay to need milk, to need somebody to feed us, to need somebody to prepare it for us. Think of all those analogies. That works. So don't feel bad, because we're all at different stages, and no one is perfect in this room. No one is perfect in this room. And we're all at different levels. Some of us are really mature in areas, some of us are less mature in those same areas, and so it's not wrong. The goal is to be moving towards solid food. Maturity is an interesting word because we use it for elderly people. We use it for getting old. And so sometimes we get our definition of maturity mixed in with age. And maturity actually isn't age. Maturity is, it's a mindset and it's ability. It's not actually age. You can have a mature 7-year-old. And you can actually have a mature 7-year-old who's mature for their age. But you could also have a mature 7-year-old that just in a season just had a really mature response. So I have a 5-year-old. He's amazing. He's a little me. That's probably why he's amazing. And he is so smart. And he's exactly like me. So you can ask my mom what that meant when I was a little kid. And so, there's that prayer that every parent has, I hope you have a child just like you. My mom got her wish, and I'm praying that same prayer for my 5-year-old. And I can't wait till he comes to me, how did you deal with this? Jesus, you need Jesus, son. But he blows me away sometimes because there's random times when his response to a situation is so mature, it blows me away. It's maturer than my response to the situation. And I'm sitting there going, how did a 5-year-old just school me? Like a 5-year-old just showed me just how much I'm drinking milk in this area. It's like, oh, Ezra, thank you for... And then I feel bad, and then he does something absolutely silly because he's 5, and I'm like, okay, there, you're still 5. Whew, my job is safe. So I want to stress that because sometimes we look at our age and we go, the older we are, the more mature we should be automatically. I think the older we are, the more experience we get, but experience and maturity aren't the same thing. Let me just give you a basic definition of maturity that I like a lot. Maturity is being secure in who you are and not worried about what other people say or perceive about you. So that's why when somebody can come to you and go, hey, I noticed this area in your life that you're kind of stumbling. Oh, let me give you a really good example. She's listening, but she's not here, so she can't be angry at me till later today. So that's a problem for later, Miko. My wife was talking to me about, she has a brother who is a Christian hip-hop artist, and he just released an album, and she guested on a track. So my wife is on a track that you can buy through iTunes. She doesn't get any money. We should talk to him about that. Let me make a note real quick. Talk to Doug about royalties. But she's on this track, and it's amazing. It was really cool, the recording process, and she's very proud. I'm very proud of her. It's a dream of hers to be on something that you can buy that, was singing. And her mom called her to say, hey, we got the CD, we popped in and went to track 3, listened to you, and according to Alyssa, wow, my mother-in-law, whose birthday it is, by the way. So happy birthday to my mother-in-law, Donna. But she was like, I wouldn't have recognized your voice. That sounds nothing like you. I only remember you singing from choir when you were a kid. Well, I guess you lead worship at your church. This is what my wife is telling me, is relaying to me. And I looked at her and I said, did she say you did a good job? Is there a compliment there? And Alyssa goes, yeah, I think she liked it. Now, I know my mother-in-law. So I know my mother-in-law said, that was great. You did an amazing job, honey. And then said other things. But what does my wife hear? I didn't even recognize your voice. I haven't, right? And I kind of made a comment about it. And I made a comment, and Alyssa got annoyed at me, and I said, oh, you heard that, but you didn't hear the compliment that your mother probably gave you. You can't remember the compliment your mother probably gave you. And she gave me a dirty look, and she walked out of the house. And I sat there and said, okay, obviously I could have been better in communicating. I'll admit that. But I also realized I was kind of giving her some advice, like, you heard the negative, you didn't hear the positive. You heard the maybe potential criticism, though I'm sure Mom didn't mean it as a criticism, but Alyssa took it that way, and you didn't hear the compliment. And I'm like, showing my wife an area that she might have some immaturity. And then this morning, I'm talking to Charlie, and we're talking about some of our own issues in that. And I go, yeah, I made a cake for my son, because I make a wonderful, beautiful, delightful, delicious cakes. And it's a thing that I do for my children. I make them a special cake on their birthday, and everyone loved it, and it was this amazing, lovely cake, and everyone's telling me what a good job I did. And I'm like, yeah, the cake was a little dry. And I just said, oh, thank you, Lord, for showing me my immaturity in hearing a compliment, but only taking the criticism. Somebody says, great cake, and my response is, oh, it's a little dry. I overbaked it a little bit, right? Everyone, great cake. It's a little dry. Well, I had to go, Lord, I'm so sorry. Help me. That's maturity, to actually know that I messed up, to know that there's a area that I need to grow in, and not beat myself up, not beat my wife up, not get all worked up, because I'm secure in who I am. Now, let me add to that. Maturity is being secure in who you are and not worried about what others say or perceive about you. And for Christians, this is because we're rooted in our connection to God and our identity. My maturity comes through my connection with God. If I define maturity as this, where I am able, that I do not care, I don't get worked up by what people perceive of me, which means I'm actually open to people telling me things they might see in me that need work. I'm also humble when people praise me, because I know who I am, and I know why I'm the way I am, because I'm a son of God, I'm a child of God. I'm connected. I think this is really important. When I was first asking God and talking to God about this, here's actually how he started. This is a lot of times how he starts when he says, I want you to talk or study or look into a thing. He'll give me information about it. And I'll go, oh, we're talking about this now? Why are we talking about this? And I remember I was driving in the car, driving home from church, and he just said, hey, you want to know what the 3 C's of immaturity are? Oh, okay, we're talking about this? Yeah, sure. What are the 3 C's of immaturity, Lord? He said, well, the first C is competition. The second C is comparison. And the third C is criticism. And I said, really? That works. That makes sense to me. Thanks. And we started this conversation about maturity. And it was very interesting because, a question is, sometimes we can tell the areas in our life that we're immature. Sometimes we know that. Like, it's clear to us, or God makes it clear to us. But a lot of times, I've noticed this in my life, I've noticed this in just about everyone's life. There's those areas of immaturity we're not aware of. And so it was really funny. He gave me the 3 C's, and I realized those are actually tests to see, am I immature in this area? Whatever area it might be. Am I acting in immaturity? How can I tell? Well, let's see. I might not know what's motivating my actions, but I can see the fruit of my actions. So I test the fruit. Am I being in competition with somebody in my life? Am I feeling this competition going on? I challenge you, if you are feeling competition with somebody, you are being immature. You are not being rooted in your maturity in Christ. When it's suddenly a win-lose situation between you and somebody, or you in a situation, if it's a win-lose, if this person succeeds, I lose, you're in competition, and you actually are walking in immaturity, a maturity goes, even if you win, even if it's detrimental to me, I'm okay. But maturity also goes, there's no win-lose situations. There's win-win. Because even a situation meant for evil in my life, God will turn it to good as long as I stay connected to Him and I follow Him. So there's no lose-lose, there's no win-lose. So when I'm in that competition mode, I'm in immaturity. Here's a big one, really big one, comparison. Are you finding that you're comparing? Well, the grass is always greener, right? So you can look around and go, well, here's what I do, because I am 33, father of 3, own a home, and I'm turning into a homeowner in America, and so I'm looking at all my neighbors' yards. And I had a goal this year. I said, I'm going to have a green yard, because my yard dies every year and is overrun with weeds every year. And I was like, this year, I'm going to have a green grass deep into the season. It'll be wonderful. Then we had triple-digit weather, and I said, forget it. But that was my goal. And I used to compare, and I go, well, Edgar's yard is better than my yard. Well, of course, he tore it up and put turf down. I can't do that, or / don't want to do that. So it's like, of course. So it's like, why am I getting in comparison? Do you drive down your street and go, oh, the Petersons have a nicer car than I do? Do you come to church and say, wow, pastor talked to, I'm trying to think of a name that's not in the building. Betty, there's no Bettys here, right? Right. Wow, pastor talked to Betty and didn't talk to me. Do you go to work and say, so-and-so got a raise and I didn't? Do you look at your family dynamic and go, my brother was the favorite one, my sister was always the favorite one, oh, they got an inheritance that I didn't get? Do you get stuck in these comparisons? I want to just encourage you, you're living in immaturity in that area that you are comparing, and you need to be careful. Again, there's no comparison. I have Jesus. There's no comparison. Doesn't matter. We need to learn to be like Paul. I am content with much and with little. I know how to live with a lot in abundance, and I know how to live when there's a lack. This is a blessing. I asked for this because my wife and I, I tell my wife, it's okay to have expensive habits as long as you're patient. And so, we both have, she's into photography, that's an expensive habit. I like guitars, that's an expensive habit. We were joking because my brother-in-law has, my sister-in-law was cleaning out the house and realized, wow, I think, she was talking to her husband, she's like, I think you have 150 shoes. Most of them not worn. Like, I think you have a problem. And he was like, I don't have 150 shoes. And she's like, well, there's 30 in the closet, there's 50 downstairs, and there's X amount in the garage. And he goes, yeah, but that's not 300 like you said. And I said, bro, she said 150, and that's really close to 150. And we all laughed. And he's like, yeah, but I'm trying to sell them. It's like, yep, I hear you. I was like, it's okay to have, it's okay. you just have to be careful. I have 6 guitars, but I accumulated them slowly, and I don't compare. So it's okay to want things. It's okay to look at what somebody has and go, I would like that. It's okay. But you also have to have the maturity to go, but I don't need it now. I can't afford it now. I don't have a place to put it. Right? Now, we can do this in our spiritual lives too. Wow, that person has such amazing gifting. I want that gifting. But not to the detriment of being angry and bitter at them, not to the detriment of what God is calling you to do. Like, we need to learn. It's like Mark Tubbs talking about, does the thumb get angry at the index finger? No, you figure out who you are. You stay confident in that, and comparison goes out the window, because it can't compare whatever you have. I have this thing, and I work on this. This is a worked on conviction in my life. I don't care what you have, because I have Jesus, and I have my thing with Jesus. And guess what? My thing with Jesus is better than all your things with Jesus. It's just the truth. It's the truth. I am his favorite. He tells me that. Every time I ask, he says, yes, you are. That's all I know. And that's all I care about. The last one is criticism. That's the really malicious one, because that's the one that says, I need to tear you down to feel better. You have something, or I'm envious, or I probably feel like I'm in competition with you. I'm probably comparing with you, and now I'm going to criticize you to try and tear you down and make me feel better by building you down. I try and build myself up, and we know that doesn't work. So we have to be careful. Are we sharing information that's important, or are we gossiping? Are we having a conversation and sharing a real concern, or are we just criticizing someone to make them feel bad? You see, the funny thing is, when I was thinking about these 3 C's, I can think of a good version of all of these. I can think of a good version of all of these, even competition. There's friendly competition. There's the joking kind of camaraderie when you're working to go, I'm going to do more than you, I'm going to do more than you, and it actually can bring people together. It can make them do more. It can motivate. You can have competition as a motivation. That's not bad, and it's not a sign of immaturity. You can have comparison in the sense of, this person has X, Y, and Z, I have A, B, and C, and it's important to know that. And as long as it doesn't become envious and covetous, it's actually okay. And there are some instances where you actually want to compare, because you want to see, what can I do better? Have you ever done that? Have you ever compared your work or your desire or your dream with somebody else's, because they seem to be further along, and you can go, what are they doing that I'm not doing? If you can do that in a healthy way, and it's not immaturity, and you can't criticize in a healthy way, but you can critique in a healthy way. If somebody comes to me and says, I'm trying to get better at X and you're pretty good at this, give me some pointers. I can't just be all frou-frou and, oh, you're good in this, don't worry. If they really want to improve, we have to know what they aren't doing well. And so there is a place for critique that is actually from a mature place. So there's these good things too. But those are the 3 C's of immaturity. I have a big C I want to tell you about of maturity. Here's the big C of maturity. It's called Christ. How do you know if you're being mature? Christ is the measuring stick that we compare our maturity by, because the more mature I am, the more Christ-like I am. We talk about fivefold ministry. We believe in fivefold ministry. Do you guys remember what the purpose of fivefold ministry is? Building up to what? Equipping the church to achieve the full measure of the maturity of Christ. That's the goal. When you come to church and you're being taught, when you commune with God, when you're receiving, the goal is always to grow the Christ in you, so that there's more Christ in you than there was the day before, so that more Christ comes out. And the more mature I am, the more Christ-like I am. Now, the thing about that I really want to stress here is the mature Christ that we're talking about, sometimes we get messed up because we get a messed up idea of Christ. And the picture that popped in my head when I was thinking about this was Clark Kent in Superman. That a lot of times our Christ is Clark Kent. And he should be Superman. Because if you guys read the comic books or watch the original trilogy, actually there might have been 4, but yeah, Christopher Reeve, his Clark Kent was great. He was clumsy, he was weak, he stuttered, didn't know how to act, he was socially awkward, and then he'd take off the glasses and he'd be Superman, and he'd be competent. A lot of us, we have a Clark Kent Jesus. We read about Jesus, we have this picture of Jesus, and he's this, we picture the lion, we picture the lamb, and we actually ignore the revelation of Jesus that's more of the lion on the steed. And part of the maturity is in circumstances figuring out what aspect am I presenting, what aspect is right. But even the Jesus that you think of when he was in his 3 years of ministry on the earth, he was pretty rough at times. He was pretty direct. He was strong, and he was assertive, and he was confident in God, and he was confident in himself as a child of God. And so when we're supposed to be more like Christ, we're not supposed to be the Clark Kent. We're supposed to be the Superman. The appropriate level of force, the appropriate level of power to the situation. I just want to share that because our measuring stick, if we use Christ as our measuring stick, we then need to make sure our picture of Christ is as whole and complete as possible. Because where our picture of Christ is distorted, our maturity will be distorted. So how do we get more mature? How do we become more mature? What actions can we do to help us? Because we like to think sometimes just living will be enough, and it's not. This is an active process that we have to step into. It's not just, I live and I get older and I get more mature, sometimes in a little bit, but actually, I know plenty, and I'm looking to look at all of you guys. I am not talking about anyone in this room, okay? This is not an attack. This is an attack on anybody, but I know a lot of people that are older than me that I'm more mature than. It's just the fact of the matter. So age is not a guarantor. There's actually a process we step into. So I have 3 things that I want to talk about, and then we'll be done. But my premise here will be Matthew 13. How many of you Bible heads know Matthew 13? Okay. There's a parable in Matthew 13 called the parable of the sower. Parable of the sower. So I want to talk about the parable of the sower. It's a good parable. Most of us I'm going to say all of us know it. So that's annoying. I got caught in the menu. Sorry, guys. So Jesus tells this parable of the sower who's sowing seeds. And he says some of the seeds land in the rocks, some of them land among thorns, some of them land in good soil. If you remember this. And I really enjoy this because the disciples were like, we don't understand you. Make it clearer to us. And so he jumped down. So if you go to Matthew, we're going to start at Matthew 13, verse 10. Then the disciples came and said to him, why do you speak in parables? Oh, no, I'm too far ahead. He said, why do you speak in parables? And he explains why he speaks in parables. If you jump down to verse 18, he says, hear then the parable of the sower. When anyone hears the word of the kingdom and does not understand it, the evil one comes and snatches it away, what has been sown in his heart. This is the seed that was sown along the path. As for what was sown on the rocky ground, this is the one who hears the word, immediately receives it with joy, yet has no root in himself, but endures for a while, and when tribulations or persecution arises on account of the word, immediately he falls away. And I realize I'm not in the translation I want, so my wording is going to change slightly. He falls away, and the one sown with seed among the thorns, this is the one who hears the word, and the anxiety of the world and the deceitfulness of wealth chokes the word, and it becomes unfruitful. But the one sown with seed on the good soil, this is the one who hears the word, understands it, who indeed bears fruit and produces some 100, some 60, and some 30 times as much. So how do you get mature? You need to cultivate your soil. You need to make sure when the word of the Lord comes to you, it lands on good soil. I think, and I'm not, again, this is my perception of the Big C church, okay? not the little C church, the big C church. There's a lot of Christians who have let their soil get rocky and have let their soil get overrun with weeds. And it's very interesting because those are the ones where the word comes and it actually does sprout, but it doesn't bear fruit. It withers away. So the thing is, the process we step into is we cultivate our soil. We cultivate our preparedness for when the word comes, so there's a deep root system and it bears fruit. In this instance, it bears fruit of the maturity, because when the word comes to transform us into Christ. And the more Christ-like we are, the more we step into maturity. So we need to get into good soil. We need to cultivate our soil. And I have 3 things I want to talk to you about that. The first one is the soil of the Bible. We are transformed by the renewing of our minds. We are cleansed by the washing of the word. That's in Ephesians 5:26. We are cleansed by the washing of the word. We need to read our Bibles. Here's a common thing that I see a lot, and actually this is a big sign of immaturity for me. When I talk to Christians and I hear these, this is a big sign of immaturity. When they have an idea about Christ or about the kingdom, they read their Bible and it's not there, or the opposite is in the Bible, and they ignore that. So it's when we self-edit the Bible because we have an idea. Maturity comes when we read our Bible and we let the Bible teach us. We don't teach the word, right? So I have an idea, and I go, this is a great idea. How do I know if this is a God idea? I see if I can find it in the word. If I can find it in the Bible, if I can find that principle, it's probably a God idea. If I can't, it might be a good idea, but it's not a God idea, and sometimes it's just a bad idea. But I deal with this in my whole life. I've dealt with this because sometimes as Christians, again, we don't cultivate our own soil. So I think sometimes when we let our soil get overwhelmed with weeds or rocks, it's because most of the Bible we get is on Sunday morning with the pastor giving the message. And that's most of the Bible. And so we hear the pastor's interpretation, we hear the pastor's favorite version, we hear all of that. And that's great. In fact, you should be going to church where at least you hear some Bible. That's great. But you should be going home, and in your own time, you should be reading it. Let it read you. I love that. And learn. Because he doesn't contradict his word. And if you want to get to know who God is, the best way to do it, the quickest way to do it, the safest way to do it, read his word. Because yes, we can talk to God personally. Yes, he talks to us personally. But he also does things like he allows our idols to obstruct his word, his personal word to us. So if I have an idol, he won't necessarily bust through that idol. He'll talk to me in relation to that idol. So it distorts his message. If I don't have a renewed mind, he'll say something and I'll take it through my processing and my strongholds. And he allows that to happen. He really does. So what happens when I read the word is the word, the Bible, challenges my idols. It challenges the strongholds of thought I have in my mind, and I have to wrestle. And typically when I wrestle with the word, I lose, which is good. In my brain, my mind becomes renewed, and I'm transformed because my thinking changed, because it realigned with the principles that he's already written down. I share this. God communicates this to us multiple ways. Sometimes he'll call us. Other times he writes letters. Sometimes when we ask him a question and we call him to go, Lord, I need to know the answer, he goes, I already wrote you a letter. We have to read this word. The second, the soil of community. We have to be in community. In the class that we're going through right now, the discussion group, one of the questions was how do we realize our own sin and how do we deal with it? And we're talking about the process. And I was like, a lot of the times our sin, we're blind to our sin. You know, it's that whole speck. I can see the speck in your eye, but I somehow can't see the log sticking out of mine. We're blind to our own sin at times. We need brothers and sisters in Christ coming to us, speaking the truth in love, saying, hey, here's an issue that you have. Here's a problem you might not be aware of. And we need to trust people. My answer to that was I get reminded about when Jesus healed the blind person. And so he healed him and he said, what do you see? And he goes, I see trees walking around like men. And Jesus said, oh, let's try it again. Let's do it again. It was a progressive healing, which is great because first it teaches us that there's progressive healings. Even Jesus had to pray more than once, which is always great. But second, it's just this statement where typically that's the process I go through when somebody tells me about an area of immaturity in my life. My first response is, maybe I see what you're talking about. It's like, maybe you need to tell me again. Maybe you need to point it out when I do it so I can go, oh, that's what you're talking about. Maybe I need to trust you and I need to go to God and say, pray and open my eyes so I see that more clearly. But if we're outside of community, or we're not in a healthy community that does that challenges each other, that process doesn't happen. And we become more insular. And that's actually, I think when we step out of community or only in community that is a community through agreement, meaning we all agree, so there's no disagreements, so nobody gets offended, that's when we actually create those strongholds. That's when we create those idols that then God, he'll speak to us, he'll speak the truth, but it'll get deflected, it'll get twisted through our own filters and perceptions. By the way, one of my favorite examples of that is I remember I listened to this prophetic word by this prophet once, and I'm not going to go into it, but it was a really great word, and my spirit said, that's true. And the guy was obviously preaching, and he actually, I need to find the clipping because it's a really perfect example of a prophet not exaggerating the word, not adding to it, just telling the word. Here's the funny thing. He was saying it to an audience that had an idea about what that word meant. I'm just going to go for it, actually. He was talking about an election. And he said, he was in Georgia. And he said, this election is going to be decided in Georgia. And he had this whole thing, and he only spoke the truth. There was no adding to it. He didn't say who would win. He didn't say who would lose. He just said, this is important. Election happened, turned out differently than a lot of people wanted. But I went back to that word and I said, that word is still 100% correct. There is no reason this prophet needs to come and apologize for this word. A lot of people would probably be angry because their perception, they assumed what he was saying meant the person they wanted to win would win. But he was right. Georgia was a battleground. Georgia decided the election in many ways. And I was like, wow, Lord, give me that kind of accuracy and that kind of confidence to share that word. Because I know a lot of prophets would share that word and then add who they wanted to win, because you hear that word and you go, he's telling me this, that must mean what I want. They'd put their own desires in it. And I was like, I was really impressed just personally with that prophet. Because I see a lot of some of this on my own sphere. I see a lot of immaturity in the prophetic in this way, where it goes through our own filters, and we get a word of God, but through our filter, we add our own stuff. So there's still the core of truth, typically, but there's also a lot of fluff that gets added to it. And so I really appreciated that prophet. Was it Jeremiah? I can't remember who it was. But you need to have community. We're a body. We're a family. Christianity actually only works in community. It's this thing that God does that I absolutely adore, where he says, it's this and it's that. So our walk with Christ is deeply personal, and it's deeply personalized to us. That's why I'm his favorite. That's why you're his favorite, because it's deeply personal to you, but it does not function correctly outside of community. You got to love that. It's my walk, but I need you guys. It's your walk, but you need me. That's how he does it. And so when you remove part of that, when you go, I'm just going to let the pastor determine my walk with Christ. I'm just going to believe what the pastor teaches and just believe everything they say, you're removing yourself out of the equation. It doesn't work. When you go, I'm just going to be a lone wolf and I'm going to go off and do my own thing, and only God can tell me what to do, and I only listen to God and I only do it my own way, and no one else can say anything, you lose it. It has to be your personal walk with community, with family. And the final soil, the soil of presence. 2 Corinthians 3:18 talks about we're transformed into his likeness as we behold him, as we gaze upon the face of Jesus. I have a really good friend who once, the way God had shared that with him is, he said he saw himself and he saw Jesus come right here. And he called that intimacy sharing breath space. How many people do you do sharing breath space? How many people do you have that sharing breath space? That's really intimate. I'll tell you right now, there's 4 people in my life I have that sharing breath space with. My wife and my 3 kids. They're the ones I get right up in there. Right? I don't do that. Even if I'm really upset with you, I'm not going to get, Gloria, we talked about this. No, I'm teasing. I'm teasing. But that's the kind of intimacy, that's the closeness we're supposed to have with Jesus. Can you imagine beholding him and him being that close, that you're sharing his breath? That's the communion. So it's the presence. It's getting into the presence of God, letting that presence wash over you, letting that presence transform you. Because every time, I actually had this revelation driving here this morning. Every time we get filled with the Spirit, it's not just for the tingles and the hose and the laughing. It's actually every time his presence comes on us, we're empowered. Every time. It is actually an empowerment. Every time. That's why it's so important to stay in his presence, to get in his presence. Because when I leave that, I'm more empowered than when I entered. So how do we grow in maturity? We get our soil right. How do we get our soil right? We read our word. We stay plugged into community even when it hurts. And we stay plugged into his presence even when it seems inconvenient. Amen? Amen. So Father, I just thank you right now. I thank you for the work you're doing. Part of why I shared this is I felt like the Lord said that he's releasing a maturing spirit. And I said, a maturing spirit? Holy Spirit. But I was like, what does that mean? And I just feel like if you say yes, because it's an invitation, if you say yes, there is a journey of deepening maturity. There's an emphasis in this season of a deepening maturity. I feel like if you say yes, the word's going to open up, community's going to open up, his presence is going to open up to you. Because mature Christians are effective Christians. So Father, I just say yes to that process. I say yes, and I just pray right now for everyone that says yes, Holy Spirit, would you come and would you touch them? Would you feel them? Would you empower them? Father, would you open their eyes to the opportunities, to the times, and to the ways that they can start cultivating their soil? And Father, I just pray for encouraging victories. Father, I pray for encouraging results that they go, this is working. I'm going to keep on doing this. And I thank you for your love. I thank you for your persistence. I thank you for the faith that you have with us. I thank you that your desire is to make us more effective. And we say yes to your plan. In Jesus' name, amen. Have a good week, guys.